Hear the story, the oldest in the world, engraved with the stylus of time on tablets of baked clay, retrieved from the silent dust of the sunken millennia. It is the saga of Gilgamesh, the mighty king of the city of Uruk. Uruk with its towering walls, Uruk with the sacred precinct of Iana, the shining jewel of Mesopotamia, Gilgamesh, whose essence was two-thirds divine, formed from the essence of the heavens and only one-third mortal, a spark of humanity in a superhuman frame, a being of breathtaking power, whose arms could shatter rocks, and whose spirit was as unbridled and wild as an untamed river. Your name, Gilgamesh, he held sway over the lands of Sumer and Akkad, an echo carried by the desert wind, feared by his enemies, admired, albeit reluctantly, by his own people. He was destined to be the shepherd of his people, the protector of Uruk. Yet his early rule was a yoke, heavy and merciless, marked by a tyranny born of his immense strength and insatiable desire for self-assertion. He challenged the young men of Uruk to relentless, exhausting competitions, whether in wrestling, running, or martial games. He drained their strength, their youth, their will to live with his unbridled divine energy, against which no mortal could prevail. He, the king, claimed the bitter right of the first night with every bride, a shadow that fell over every wedding celebration before the young woman was given to her husband. The hearts of fathers were heavy. The mothers wept in secret. The citizens of Uruk, men and women, groaned under the weight of his uncontrolled power, under the burden of his whims. Their complaints, first a whisper in the alleys, then a murmur in the squares, eventually rose as a desperate prayer to the gods in the vast sky, to Anu, the All-Father. Anu, the Lord of the firmament, the supreme God whose ears no suffering remained closed to, heard the persistent laments of his people. He called Aruru to him, the great goddess of creation, she who had formed humans from the life of the earth. Anu spoke with a solemn voice. Aruru, you have created humans. Now hear their distress. Gilgamesh's power knows no bounds. His arrogance overshadows the splendor of Uruk. Create a counterpart to him, one who is equal to his wildness, his unbridled nature. Let their strengths contend. Let them wrestle like two young bulls, so that Gilgamesh may learn humility, and Uruk may finally find peace. Aruru, obedient, heard the words of Anu. She washed her hands in pure water, took a handful of clay from the untouched step, moistened it with her divine saliva, and skillfully shaped Enkidu, the wild, the son of silence, a creature of nature. His whole body was covered in thick hair. His head hair grew long and untamed like a woman's, shaggy and rough like the fur of grain in the wind. He knew no human settlement, no cooked food, no woven clothes. With the swift gazelles, he grazed on the lush grasses of the plain. With the shy, wild creatures, he approached the cool waterholes. With the countless creatures of the steppe, his innocent heart drank from the pure water. His life was freedom, guided by instinct and pure. A trapper, a hunter, whose carefully laid traps Enkidu destroyed with ease, and whose laboriously dug pits he refilled to protect the wild animals, saw him one day at the watering hole. For 3 consecutive days, the trapper encountered this primeval man, and deep fear gripped him, paralyzing his limbs. His face, normally sun-browned and weathered, was pale and distorted with sheer terror at this uncanny apparition. He hurried as fast as his feet could carry him to his old father and reported in a trembling voice of the mighty wild, who had undone his work and radiated an aura of untamed power. The wise father listened to his son's story and advised him, "Go to Uruk, the city with mighty walls. Approach King Gilgamesh, for he is of great wisdom and power. Tell him about this man from the steppe. Gilgamesh will know what to do." The trapper, taking his advice, set out on the long and arduous journey, reached the gates of Uruk, and finally stood before the king's throne. He told of Enkidu, of his superhuman strength, his deep connection with the animals, and how he made hunting and trapping in the steppe impossible. Gilgamesh listened to the trapper's words with tense attention. He, who feared no challenge, whose heart longed for an equal opponent, whose soul sensed a lesson no mortal rival could fulfill, devised a cunning plan. He spoke to the trapper with a calm but firm voice. "Return to your watering hole, to the place where you saw this wild. Take Shamhat with you, one of the sacred courtesans of the Ist temple, a woman of great beauty and seductive skill. Let her reveal her feminine charms when Enkidu comes to the water-hole to quench his thirst. When he beholds her beauty, he, who knows no woman, will inevitably approach her. And when he unites with her, his animal companions, who grew up with him in the steppe and shared his innocence, will abandon and shun him." The trapper did as Gilgamesh commanded. He returned to the steppe, and Shamhat, the priestess of love, accompanied him. They waited patiently at the watering hole. On the first day, Enkidu did not come. On the second day, as the sun sank lower, Enkidu still did not come. But on the third day, as the thirsty herds came to the water in long streams, there appeared in the midst of the flocks Enkidu. Shamhat, courageous and aware of her task, bared her breasts. She showed him her graceful beauty, a revelation in the harsh wilderness. Enkidu, who had never before seen a woman, whose world had only consisted of animals and nature, was spellbound, captivated by her sight. For 6 days and 7 nights he loved Shamhat. He surrendered to the ecstasy and tenderness unknown to him. Afterwards, when he rose, sated, and changed, intending to return to his animals, his friends of the steppe, the gazelles fled from him, the wild herds avoided him, and they no longer recognized him. Enkidu was weakened. His knees failed him, for his animal companions were irretrievably gone. His original wildness was broken, but he had also gained wisdom. Reason and human consciousness had come into him. He was no longer merely an animal, but began to become human. He returned to Shamhat, who awaited him with a gentle smile, and sat at her feet, listening. Shamhat spoke to him in a melodious voice. "You have become beautiful, Enkidu. Your features are noble. You resemble a god. Why do you still wish to wander with the animals through the lonely steppe? Come with me to Uruk, the city with strong walls, the center of civilization, to the sacred temple of Iana, the exalted seat of Anu, and the shining Ista. There in Uruk dwells Gilgamesh, the man of perfect, unsurpassed strength, who towers over men like a wild bull, yet possesses a heart that longs for friendship. Her words, like seeds sown in fertile soil, took root in his newly awakened heart. He felt a deep longing for a friend, for someone who would understand his heart, acknowledge his strength, and share his loneliness. He said to Shamhat, "Lead me to Uruk, to this city of wonders. Lead me to Gilgamesh. I want to challenge him. I want to show him my strength, the strength of the steppe, and see if he is worthy of me." Shamhat clothed Enkidu with a portion of her own precious garment. She kept the other part for herself as a sign of their connection. She patiently led him to a modest hut of shepherds at the edge of civilization. There, among simple people, Enkidu learned to eat bread, the solid food of humans, which he had not known before, whose taste was strange yet satisfying to him. He learned to drink beer, the intoxicating drink of companionship, which expanded but also confused his senses. He washed his heavily haired body, cleansed himself of the dust of the steppe, anointed himself with fragrant oil, and became more and more like a civilized man. He took up a weapon, a spear and a club, to hunt lions that threatened the herds and catch wolves so that the shepherds could rest in peace at night. He became their protector, their guardian, a hero to the common folk. One day, as the sun stood high in the sky, Enkidu saw a man hurrying past the hut, agitated. He asked Shamhat the reason for this haste. The man, she explained, was on his way to a wedding in Uruk, where Gilgamesh, by the king's dreadful custom, would claim the bride before giving her to her groom. A deep, sacred anger seized Enkidu at these words. His face, usually open and naive, blazed with indignation at this injustice. He resolved on the spot to go to Uruk and confront this arrogant king, to end his tyranny. As Enkidu, the man of the wild, entered the great city of Uruk, the curious people gathered in the streets and squares around him. They marveled at his immense size, his raw strength that seemed to radiate from every pore, his complete otherness. They whispered and said, "He resembles Gilgamesh, is almost as tall, yet shorter. But look at his muscles. He is more powerfully built, his bones thicker." As Gilgamesh approached the wedding house, in full regalia, and accompanied by guards to enforce his unjust right, Enkidu resolutely blocked his way. He blocked the entrance with his mighty foot, immovable like a rock. They grasped each other without a word, their muscles tensed like two mighty bulls snorting before a fight. They broke the doorposts of the house. The walls of surrounding buildings shook under the force of their struggle. Gilgamesh, accustomed to defeating every opponent effortlessly, felt for the first time resistance equal to his own. He bent his knee, a sign of acknowledgement. His royal wrath gave way to a new, unexpected realization. In Enkidu, he saw not just an enemy, but an equal, a rival of the same stature, perhaps even the friend he longed for. After the fierce battle, which produced no clear victor but ended in mutual exhaustion and admiration, they embraced. A silence fell over the crowd, which had witnessed the incredible event. Ninsun, the wise and divine mother of Gilgamesh, who had watched the fight with prophetic insight, saw the deep bond that had arisen between these two extraordinary men. She stepped forward, blessed their union, and declared Enkidu her adopted son, Gilgamesh's beloved brother. Thus began a friendship so deep and unshakable that it is remembered in the ancient stories and songs as a legend for all time. In the glorious city of Uruk, whose walls reached for the heavens and whose temples shone with the splendor of the gods, King Gilgamesh found himself restless. His heart, forged for greatness, throbbed with a yearning that no victory, no festival, no pleasure could quiet. Though he ruled a city of stone and wisdom, his spirit was drawn to the wild, toward deeds that would echo beyond the fragile span of mortal life. And so the thought took root within him, to journey into the distant cedar forest, that sacred domain where Humbaba, the terrible guardian appointed by Enlil, stood watch. There, among trees older than kings, where the breath of the gods stirred the air, Gilgamesh sought to carve his name into eternity. When he shared his plan, the elders of Uruk trembled. They spoke with solemn voices, warning him of the peril. "Do not go," they pleaded, "for Humbaba's roar can shake the mountains. His gaze can melt stone. Even the gods fear his wrath." But Gilgamesh only smiled, a smile both proud and reckless. "Was I made to live in shadow?" he said. "Shall I die in my bed like an unremembered man? No, I will face this creature of Enlil and return with glory, or not at all." Enkidu, his brother in spirit, listened in silence. He who had once roamed the wilderness and spoken with the beasts felt the weight of dread. Yet he saw in Gilgamesh's eyes a fire that no mortal fear could quench. And so, though his heart was heavy, he rose and said, "Then I shall go with you. Let us strike down Humbaba together. Let our friendship be our shield, and may the gods bear witness to our courage." That night, beneath the canopy of Uruk's stars, the two companions prepared for the long march. The blacksmiths worked by firelight, forging great axes of bronze and swords that gleamed like rivers of lightning. The elders of the city blessed them, but their eyes were wet, for they feared they would never see their king again. And the mother of Gilgamesh, Ninsun the Wise, ascended the temple steps, spread incense before Shamash, and prayed, "O sun god, who watches all paths, protect my son on the road of no return. May his friend Enkidu guard him as a brother guards his blood." When dawn broke, the streets of Uruk filled with murmurs. The two heroes stood at the gate, cloaked in dust and determination. Gilgamesh turned once more to his people. "Look upon your king," he said, "and remember this day, for we go to challenge the terror of the gods and bring back honor that will never fade." Then they set forth, two men, bound by destiny, walking into the endless plains where the wind sang and the horizon glowed like molten gold. They marched for days, for nights, crossing rivers and ridges, until at last the air grew heavy with the scent of cedar. The forest loomed before them, vast, ancient, alive. The very trees seemed to breathe, whispering warnings through the dark. And in the depths of that shadowed realm waited Humbaba, the guardian of the gods, whose eyes blazed like the dawn, and whose roar was thunder made flesh. As they stood before the towering gates of the cedar forest, silence hung heavy upon them. Even the wind dared not stir. The trees rose like pillars of eternity, their roots buried deep in the bones of the earth, their crowns lost among the clouds. The air shimmered with the breath of gods, ancient, watchful, and cruel. Gilgamesh turned to Enkidu. His voice, though steady, carried the gravity of fate. "Here we stand, my friend, not before men, but before the will of heaven itself. Let fear fall away from us. Let our courage be our prayer." Enkidu nodded, gripping his axe until his knuckles turned white. He had once roamed this wilderness, had known the whispers of its spirits. Now it seemed the forest itself remembered him and shuddered. He said softly, "The path ahead is death, Gilgamesh. Yet it is better to fall in battle than to fade in silence." And Gilgamesh answered, "Then let us carve our names upon eternity." They entered. The forest swallowed them whole. Light thinned beneath the vaulted canopy, and the air grew thick with the scent of resin and damp earth. The sound of their footsteps was devoured by an unseen vastness. Suddenly, the ground trembled, a deep, slow rhythm, like the heartbeat of the mountain. Then he came, Humbaba, guardian of the gods, terror of mortals. His face was a storm of shifting horrors. His breath seared the air like fire. 7 auras of power surrounded him, each one blazing brighter than lightning. His voice crashed like thunder between the trees. "Who dares disturb the domain of Enlil? Who enters the forest of the gods to challenge death itself?" Gilgamesh stood tall, unflinching. "We are Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, and Enkidu, born of the wild. We come not as thieves, but as seekers of glory. We will fell you, Humbaba, and bring your cedar to the gates of Uruk." Humbaba laughed, a sound that shook the heavens. "Fools! You think yourselves heroes. You are insects beneath the heel of the gods." And with that, he struck. The earth split. Trees cracked like brittle bones. Gilgamesh raised his axe, meeting the blow, and the clash of their might roared through the forest. Steel bit into shadow, shadow swallowed light. Enkidu darted in, striking at Humbaba's flanks, shouting for Shamash's aid. From the sky, the sun god answered. 7 winds rose, tearing through the forest, pinning Humbaba where he stood. His auras faltered, his limbs grew heavy. Now Gilgamesh saw his moment. He lifted his blade high, eyes blazing with the fire of kings. "By the blood of Uruk," he cried, "and by the bond of our brotherhood, fall." With one final swing, the axe descended. The guardian's roar tore the sky apart, and then was silent. Humbaba, the dread of ages, lay slain. The forest itself seemed to weep, for a sacred order had been broken. Enkidu, breathing heavily, stared down at the fallen giant. His heart was torn between triumph and sorrow. "We have done what no mortal dared," he said, "but we have also angered the gods." Gilgamesh looked to the horizon, where the light of Shamash burned red through the trees. "Then let the gods be angry," he said quietly. "For today, men have become eternal." Together they cut the great cedars, shaping from them beams fit for palaces and temples, gifts for Uruk. As they left the forest behind, the sun sank in blood-red light, and in the whisper of the wind there was both victory and warning. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu returned to Uruk, the city roared like a storm of joy. The people filled the streets, singing the names of their heroes. From the temple towers to the markets below, their cries rose to the heavens. "Gilgamesh the mighty, Enkidu the fearless, they have slain Humbaba, guardian of the gods." Gold and cedar were carried through the gates, incense burned in offering. The scent of victory hung over the city like summer thunder. Yet, among the rejoicing eyes, one pair burned brighter and darker than all the rest. The goddess Ishtar watched from her palace of lapis and flame. Her gaze fell upon Gilgamesh, his body gleaming with the dust of conquest, his eyes like fire upon the horizon. Desire struck her like lightning. She descended from her throne and stood before him, radiant and terrible. "Come to me, Gilgamesh," she said, her voice as sweet as poison. "Be my husband. I will make you lord of all men. Your chariot shall be of gold and lapis lazuli, your horses swifter than the storm. Kings will bow before you, and the mountains will tremble at your name. Take me, and together we will rule heaven and earth." But Gilgamesh laughed, a sound that echoed like breaking bronze. "Goddess," he said, "you are the furnace of desire and the ruin of men. Which of your lovers has known peace? You loved Tammuz, yet you struck him down. You loved the lion, yet you trapped him in a pit. You loved the shepherd, and turned him into a wolf. Your love is a curse, and your embrace, death." The color drained from Ishtar's face. Her beauty twisted into fury. "You dare speak thus to me, mortal king," she cried. "I will make your name a warning. If you reject the Queen of Heaven, then heaven itself will fall upon you." She ascended to the high heavens, her rage shaking the firmament. Before the throne of her father Anu, she fell to her knees, weeping and screaming. "Father, Gilgamesh has insulted me. He has mocked the gods. Grant me the bull of heaven, that I may strike him down and destroy his city." Anu frowned. "If I give you the bull, 7 years of famine will follow. The people will cry out, and even you will have no answer. But Ishtar's fury was greater than his wisdom. Let famine come, let the earth wither. I will see Uruk ground to dust. And so Anu gave her the bull of heaven. When it descended upon the earth, the sky split open like a wound. The creature's breath was fire, its steps earthquakes. Where its hooves struck, the ground gaped, and men were swallowed whole. Uruk trembled before the wrath of the goddess. Gilgamesh and Enkidu armed themselves once more. The bull's bellow shook the city walls, its eyes like twin suns of rage. Enkidu shouted, "We have fought the monster of the forest. Shall we now fear the beast of the sky?" Together they charged. Gilgamesh leapt upon the bull's back as Enkidu seized its horns. The creature roared, shaking the heavens, but the brothers did not yield. With a cry to Shamash, Gilgamesh plunged his blade deep into its neck. The bull shuddered once, and fell. Silence followed. The earth no longer shook. The people of Uruk looked upon their kings and wept with awe. But Ishtar, from her high temple, screamed in despair. She tore her robes and cursed their names, calling down vengeance from the heavens. Enkidu, laughing, tore the thigh from the fallen bull and hurled it toward her. "If I could reach you, goddess," he shouted, "I would do the same to you." The crowd gasped, for such words could only summon doom. That night, the gods met in council, and their judgment was cold. For their arrogance, they said, for their defiance of heaven, one must die. The lot fell upon Enkidu. As the moon rose over Uruk, a shadow crossed the heart of Gilgamesh's joy. He did not yet know it, but the age of triumph was ending, and the age of sorrow had begun. That night, Enkidu dreamed. He saw the council of the gods gathered in shadow, Anu, Enlil, Shamash, and grim Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. Their faces were distant, carved from stone and fire, and from among them rose a voice colder than eternity. For the slaying of the bull of heaven, for the death of Humbaba, one of the brothers must perish. Enkidu tried to speak, to plead, but his words fell like dust. The dream shattered, and he woke with a cry. Sweat drenched his body, and his breath came in ragged gasps. Gilgamesh rushed to his side. "My brother, what terrors have seized you?" Enkidu's eyes were wild. "The gods have judged us," he whispered. "They have chosen me to die." Gilgamesh shook his head. "No, no god will take you from me. We have faced monsters. We have faced death itself." But Enkidu only smiled, a small, tired smile, filled with something deeper than fear. "Brother," he said softly, "you cannot fight the gods." Days passed, and the sickness grew. The strength that had crushed Humbaba faded from his limbs. His laughter turned to fevered murmurs. He cursed the gates of Uruk, cursed the hunter who first found him, cursed the trapper who brought him from the wilds. But then he looked upon Gilgamesh, and his anger broke. "My friend," he whispered, "I once ran with the beasts of the field. I drank from rivers and slept beneath the stars. But you gave me friendship, and with it I became human. How can I now return to the dust?" Gilgamesh knelt beside him, gripping his hand as though his strength could hold him to life. "Do not leave me, Enkidu. We will go again into the mountains. We will find another forest, another battle. Only stay." But the hand grew cold. The breath stilled. The light that had once defied gods flickered out. For 7 days and 7 nights, Gilgamesh did not move from his side. He covered Enkidu's body with fine garments, with gold, with lapis lazuli, as if beauty could deceive death. He touched his friend's heart again and again, hoping for one last beat. But there was only silence. On the 7th day, Gilgamesh cried out to the heavens, "Shall not my brother rise again? Must he sink into the earth like clay?" Was this the fate written for heroes, that we should be forgotten like the leaves of autumn? He wandered the streets of Uruk, like a man haunted. The crown upon his head felt heavier than stone. He saw the walls he had built, the towers that bore his name, and they mocked him. "What good is glory," he whispered, "if death devours all?" Then fear entered his heart. Fear not of monsters, but of time. If Enkidu, who was his equal, could fall, then he too would one day fade into dust. He could not bear it. He would not accept it. "Somewhere," he said, staring toward the endless horizon, "there must be one who has conquered death, one who has looked into the abyss and returned. I will find him. I will find the secret of eternal life, or perish seeking it." And so Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, left his city behind. He wore no crown, carried no banner, only the grief of a man who could not die and could not bear to live. Across deserts and mountains, through the ruins of forgotten gods, he walked alone. The dust rose behind him like the passing of an age. Gilgamesh wandered far from the walls of Uruk, farther than any man had ever gone. The road before him was endless, and the earth itself seemed weary of his footsteps. The sun burned his face by day, and the cold of the desert bit his bones by night. Yet he did not stop, for behind his eyes, the image of Enkidu's lifeless face burned brighter than any flame. He sought the one man who had escaped death, the ancient Utnapishtim, survivor of the Great Flood. It was said he dwelt beyond the waters of death, where no mortal could tread. And still Gilgamesh walked. He came to the twin mountains of Mashu, whose peaks touched the sky and whose roots reached the underworld. Before their gates stood the Scorpion Men, creatures whose glance brought death, whose breath was fire. Their eyes blazed like dawn breaking over a battlefield. When they saw him approach, they raised their stingers and cried out, "Who comes to the mountain whose entrance none may cross? No mortal has ever passed through the road of the sun." Gilgamesh bowed his head and spoke. "I am Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, slayer of Humbaba, conqueror of the bull of heaven. I seek Utnapishtim, the one who has found eternal life." The Scorpion Man looked upon him long, then turned to his mate. "This one has the flesh of mortals," he said, "but his heart burns with the fire of the gods." To Gilgamesh he said, "The path you seek is the road the sun takes through the darkness of night. No light dwells there, only endless shadow. If you pass through it, you may never return." Gilgamesh answered, "If I must perish, let it be in the search for immortality." So they opened the gate, and Gilgamesh stepped into the tunnel of night. For 12 leagues he walked in darkness so deep that he could not see his own hands. No stars, no moon, no breath of wind, only the sound of his own heartbeat echoing through eternity. At last, a faint glow rose before him, a whisper of dawn. He emerged into a garden of light. The trees bore jewels instead of fruit, sapphires, rubies, emeralds glimmering in the sun. The air shimmered with fragrance, and yet his heart was heavy, for even beauty could not soothe his grief. There he met Siduri, the alewife of the gods who sat by the sea of death. She looked upon him with pity. "Why do you wander, Gilgamesh, with a face like one who has seen ghosts?" He answered, "Because I have. My friend, my brother, is dust. Tell me where to find Utnapishtim. I must ask him how to escape what all men must face." Siduri sighed. "You seek the secret that the gods have hidden. No man may cross the waters of death. Even if you reach them, they will consume you." But Gilgamesh's eyes did not waver. "Then tell me who can take me across." And so Siduri pointed to the far horizon. "There you will find Urshanabi, the ferryman of Utnapishtim. If any can guide you, it is he." Gilgamesh found the ferryman among the strange stone creatures that guarded his boat. In his desperation, he shattered them, thinking they were foes. Urshanabi cried out in fury, "You fool! Those stones guided my craft across the waters of death. Now you have doomed yourself." But when he saw the despair in Gilgamesh's eyes, his anger softened. "Perhaps there is another way," he said. "Cut poles from the forest, 300 in number, each one long as a man's height. With them we may cross, if fate allows." Together they built the poles, and together they pushed the boat into the black waters. The air was still, the waves silent as a tomb. They drifted across the sea that no man may touch. Each pole carried them farther, until none were left. Then, at last, a shimmer appeared on the horizon, a shore beyond death, and upon it stood Utnapishtim, the man who had lived 1,000 lives. He looked upon Gilgamesh and said, "Why have you come, son of Uruk, through the waters of death? Your face is worn by grief, your heart devoured by fear. Do you seek life everlasting?" Gilgamesh bowed his head. "Yes, my friend is gone. I will not share his fate. Tell me how you defeated death." And Utnapishtim smiled sadly. "No man defeats death, Gilgamesh, but I will tell you what the gods once told me." Utnapishtim looked out over the horizon, his eyes reflecting centuries of sorrow and wisdom. "Long ago," he began, "the gods saw mankind multiplying, loud and unruly. They feared our voices, our deeds, and the earth itself shook with their anger. So they sent a flood to cleanse the world, sparing only me and my wife to survive." He paused, his gaze distant, and the wind seemed to carry his words. "I was warned by Ea, the god of wisdom, who spoke through the reeds. Build a great vessel, strong and square, and fill it with living creatures. Gather your family, your craftsmen, your animals. All that breathes must find refuge." I obeyed. I cut the trees, carved the beams, and sealed the ark with bitumen, storing food for every living being. Then came the sky's fury. Thunder roared like war drums, lightning tore the heavens, and rain fell in torrents. Rivers swelled, mountains trembled, and the seas rose in monstrous waves, devouring forests, villages, and men alike. For 6 days and 6 nights, the world drowned. Inside the ark, we huddled with the animals, hearts pounding as the waters consumed everything. On the 7th day, the storm calmed. I released a dove, a swallow, and finally a raven to find dry land. The raven never returned, and the world began anew. When the vessel rested upon a mountain, I offered a sacrifice to the gods. Witnessing my devotion, they granted me eternal life, so death might never touch me. Gilgamesh listened, heart pounding. "Then show me how to escape death, even for a moment. I cannot endure losing all I love. Teach me your secret." Utnapishtim studied him, seeing both courage and despair in his eyes. "Immortality is not for mortal men," he said. "But I can offer a test, a challenge to prove your resolve." "Don't sleep for 6 days and 7 nights, Utnapishtim commanded. "Only then will you earn the chance for eternal life." Gilgamesh lay upon the floor, weary from his journey, and tried to obey. But night after night, his body refused, his eyes betrayed him, and sleep fled like a hunted animal. Utnapishtim shook his head in sorrow. "See, Gilgamesh, Even the strongest cannot defeat the natural order. Then the old man relented, telling him of a secret plant at the bottom of the sea. "A flower that restores youth," he said. "Pluck it carefully, and you may regain the vigor of your prime." With the help of Urshanabi, Gilgamesh dove into the dark waters, braving currents that twisted like serpents. At last, he grasped the plant, its petals soft as silk, glowing faintly with promise. Triumphant, he returned to shore. But the gods are merciless. On his journey home, Gilgamesh stopped to rest by a well. A serpent slithered unseen, drawn to the plant's magic. Before his eyes, it devoured the flower and shed its skin, renewing itself. Gilgamesh could only watch as his chance for immortality vanished. Heartbroken, he returned to Uruk, wiser, older, and weighed down with grief. He walked the city walls, the same he had once built with pride and ambition. And he realized a truth both bitter and eternal. Even kings, heroes, and men of great deeds cannot escape death. All that remains is the legacy we leave, the stories told, the lives we touch. And so Gilgamesh inscribed his journey on stone, so that those who came after might learn. Courage is noble, friendship is precious, and the fleeting moments of life are treasures beyond measure. He looked once more at the city he had shaped, and for the first time he smiled, not for triumph over death, but for the beauty of life itself. Even in the face of the inevitable, he had lived, and that, he knew, was immortality enough.